Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Evie Brooks. Thanks for being on the show, Evie.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. I'm glad you had me.
Evie is an elite real estate investment educator, keynote speaker, investor, coach, mentor, and entrepreneur. Former advanced trainer for Rich Dad, Poor Dad, who now specializes in Panama real estate and organic agriculture investments. Over 20 years of real estate investment experience educating thousands of investors in 13 plus countries and 30 plus states in the United States. So Evie, we're glad and pleased to have you here with us and just you being willing to share your expertise. You got to give us a little background. I want to dive into the agricultural stuff and how you made it to Panama, and I think a lot of the listeners, including my thinking, how does that happen? How do, a lot of people have dreams of having a real estate business, but you don't normally think about, a business in Panama or other countries or even agriculture. So looking forward to that, but give us a little history. I know you worked with Rich Dad, Poor Dad education for a long time, and you're obviously an expert. So fill us in a little bit.
Well, I did. I worked with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've been investing for quite some time when I started with them back in the late 1990s. And I was with them until 2014 when I actually left because of the business in Panama. We were so busy. I originally left Costa Rica. That's how I got international, as I was teaching with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the international segment of elite education and real estate investing internationally. And I had made some substantial investments in Costa Rica. I had a 700-acre master plan community. And when 2008 hit, it just came to a screeching halt because Costa Rica is a tourism basically only country. And so I held on and kind of went down with the ship, as they would say. And finally, in 2012, I said, I've had enough. I'm going over to Panama, which the lowest GDP they had ever had after the 2008 crash was about 5%, all the way up to over 12% in a year's time. And that's because of the Panama Canal and the expansion of the Panama Canal and the demand and the copper mines and everything that's going on in Panama is all about the economy and the growth.
Wow. Okay. So what is it about Panama, that's that attractive to you as an investor?
The business environment. I'm always looking, no matter what I do, I look for two things, water and the opportunity. And so we have both there. And the opportunities are just rampant in Panama because there are so many people that's looking to have a retirement lifestyle overseas, a lot of expats. And that's where I first started, was working with the expats and the people that wanted to actually leave their home country and set up either new residency and or citizenship in another country.
Tell us what that is, an expat.
Expatriate. They want to expatriate from their country into another country, sometimes with citizenship, sometimes giving up their citizenship. And why do people do that? It's a number of different reasons. Taxes being primarily the number one that we hear, that their countries are just taking too much from taxes and they have to expatriate to be able to eliminate some of that tax burden that they have. And so that's where I really got my start in Costa Rica and then over into Panama. And the demand, because there's so much opportunity in Panama for international companies that come over to set up business there, the benefits that they have for, starting businesses, tax incentives, all those types of things, perks, all kinds of different opportunities. So you have companies like Exxon and Elizabeth Arden and Johnson & Johnson, and I can go on and on, Under Armour, many different companies, not just from the United States, but from all over the world that are coming into Panama because they are marketing the opportunity.
Wow. So, but your focus is agriculture.
Agriculture is my passion. I really, really love the agricultural side of it. And Panama has opened up doors for agriculture around the world. And of course, with the pandemic and everything that's gone on with that, it's a new buzzword. It's an essential item. Food is essential. So
sure is.
We have such a influx of interest for this because of what's happened with the COVID-19.
So, I guess it go in a little bit about like you said, it is essential. Obviously, we all have to eat. Everybody does, right? And we enjoy it too, which is a plus. Or we hope. But why is agriculture one of the best real estate investments?
Well, there's a number of different reasons. But first of all, with any investment, one of the things that I'm looking at is the underlying asset. It's never going to just disappear and vanish. And then with the agriculture, you've got a stream of income. It's a business in addition to the assets. So you've got an ongoing stream of income, and you don't have to wonder, am I going to be able to get renters? Am I not going to be able to get renters? I mean, I have a lot of assets and clients that have assets, condominiums in Panama that are 100% occupied and have been for months now because of COVID. But yes, everybody's still eating.
So why, I guess, I know you said, you elaborate a little bit there, but, why agriculture, why Panama, why not agriculture in the States somewhere or in another country?
Well, because I've never found the opportunities that I found in Panama. And the reason that is because with so many other places, there's plenty of farmers to produce the food. Well, when one of the companies that I work with came to Panama and realized there's no farmers to actually get their food to transport because there's not even enough food in the country to feed their people. 85% of all food required in Panama is imported into the country. But yet there was all this virgin land throughout the interior of Panama that had never been used. And the USDA came in and immediately granted USDA certified organic. And so
wow.
A very large company, one of the ones that we work with, has huge operations in Peru, hundreds of thousands of acres of land that they farm, but they have a co-op. Well, they came into Panama, they couldn't put together a co-op because there were not enough farmers to have a co-op. So they have created a concept called a reverse co-op, where they bought the land or they put options on the land 14, 15 years ago, and then they purchase the land and then sell it to the wannabe farmers like myself. And I want to be a farmer. I just don't want to be out there hoeing those rows. I want somebody else. But so we have a partnership where I own the land, I own the asset, and I partner with this large farm management company, and they do all the work, and I get the lion's share of the profits.
That sounds pretty good. Yeah. So what about just is this something that you can create passive income from, and what, is this a high return or, what kind of risks and things like that?
Well, you've got several different investment opportunities. And the first one that we started with was called a farm in a box concept. And that concept was a situation where you bought the land and the trees. And the trees are long-term income producing trees, mangoes, limes, and avocados. And they produce for 50, 60, 70, maybe even 80 years. So most of us are not going to be around when that's no longer that is a concern. But with the farm in the box, you actually own the underlying asset, which is the dirt. And when the trees start producing, your income continues to go up year over year. And it takes 4 years for that income to start coming in. And so many of our investors are retired people that's wanting to put their assets to work, like their IRAs, their 401ks, their 403bs, their pension funds. And they're like, well, I'm not going to be here in 50 or 60 years. I'm not even going to be here in 30 years. So waiting 4 years to start seeing a return for some people is a concern. On the flip side of that, a lot of those people are looking for legacy investments. So it just depends on the individual person and what they're looking for. But then we started getting into greenhouse smart farming in hydroponics. And that is a whole different animal. It produces, you start seeing returns in 24 months. It is a machine because no matter what happens in the elements, the weather, the torrential rains, the strong winds, you're still going to have production inside these greenhouses. They are massive. They're 1 hectare, which is 2.5 acre greenhouses. And they rotational crops on a 10 to 20 week basis, depending on if it's melons or berries or cucumbers or whatever. So you've pretty much got a money printing machine because it's controlled. You don't have the pest and the insects, and you don't have the weather issues. And so it's a whole different mindset. And it just depends on, there's not a right or wrong. They're both wonderful investments. But your return on investment, typically what we refer to as an internal rate of return, you're going to see on the low end 10, 11, 12%, on the high end 16, 17%.
Wow. Okay. And that demand's just going to keep growing, I assume, because population's just growing, right?
That's right. According to the United Nations, between now and 2030, 10 years from now, we're going from about 7 billion people in the world to 8.5 billion people. So that's substantial growth. And in the next 20 years, from 2030 to 2050, they're projecting another 40% worldwide population growth. So there's going to continue to be a huge demand. And technology and smart farming is going to be a wave of the future.
So what kind of, I guess, could you elaborate a little bit on the structure of a deal like that? If you have investors that are investing and they're saying, okay, you said it's going to be 4 years before there's any money coming in. Is that for every investor? So, I mean, is it like per farm? Is it like, okay, we have a farm we're fixing to, I don't know how the terms you would even use for, planting all the trees and doing all that. And then the next group of investors are going to invest in another farm, or how does that work?
Okay. So it's very simple. The farm in a box is the outside trees, because you can't put a tree inside the greenhouse, obviously. And you purchase by the hectare, and that's 2.5 acres, 2.47 acres exactly. And with that, you're going to start with about 200, 250 trees, and it will ultimately go over to about 400 trees, because you can't overload the soil all at one time with all those trees. And it takes time. From the time you purchase, you have to clear the land, and then you have to do the infrastructure. You put in the drip irrigation, which is a new technology that we're using. And then you plant the trees, and the trees have been already in the greenhouses, these same greenhouses, for a couple of years, preparing to go into the ground and be sturdy and hardy and ready to go. And then it's going to take about another 2 to 2.5 years for them to start producing. And then, of course, when they produce in the 4th year, it's not going to be as much as they produce in the 10th year, and so forth and so on. So on an annual return on investment, you're going to see starting out 7-8% in year 4, and then it goes all the way up to 35-45%, depending on the fruit that you're talking about. Now that's outside, and that's the trees. Now on the inside with the greenhouses, it's what we call rotational crops versus permanent crops. The trees are permanent crops. Inside is rotational, because you can change. Every time you grow melons, and it takes, let's say, 16 weeks from start to finish, you pull those melons out and you go back in with cucumbers, whatever is the highest demand in the marketplace at that time. And so you just keep rotating those crops and bringing in whatever's going to be the greatest demand in that period of time. So you're not just stuck with limes, even though limes may not be bringing in the top dollar right now. So in that one, because they grow so quickly, your investment goes in originally, and then they have to build the greenhouses, okay? And from that point in time, once you build the greenhouses, it's going to take about a year to do that from start to finish. All our technology is very high tech. It comes from Israel. So everything is Israeli, comes over down to the very last bolt. So that about a year from the time you order the greenhouse until it's complete, and then another year to start, a good production. So about 24 months until you're getting a return on investment. And there's investments as low as $50,000 all the way up to, people buy entire greenhouses. And it just depends on what, the individual is looking for.
So somebody could actually invest and own their own entire greenhouse?
Yes, they can.
Okay. So, but say a minimum investment could typically be $50,000.
Minimum investment could be $50,000, and that's going to be about 250 hectare. I'm sorry, not 250 hectare, 250 meters square. It'd be nice to be 250 hectare. So about 250 meters square, and your full greenhouse is about 10,000 meters. That's a full hectare. So it's kind of like fractional ownership as far as the co-op, if you would, the reverse co-op, where you're buying a small portion, because most people are not going to come in with $1.5 million to buy an entire greenhouse.
Right. So what kind of hold period then, or, when do they get their capital back from a deal like that?
It depends on the crop that you're talking about and which strategy that you're talking about, but typically in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 years is when the break even is. Now, we have everything from, I just want to be in a small investment where I am basically investing into the production of the produce, and I'm going to get a return on my investment, and it's a business. They don't own the underlying asset. And then other people say, no, I want to be in a business where I actually own the underlying asset. And so it's different programs, different opportunities, depending on what the individual person's preferences are.
Okay. So what about, risks? I know weather, for farming is always a big risk, but I would imagine with greenhouses, you all minimize that some. But what kind of risks are involved in Panama in this specific investment?
Well, in Panama, we don't have the natural disasters that we see in so many places. The way Panama is positioned in geographically, we don't get hit with the hurricanes and the tsunamis and the tornadoes, all those types of things. We do have torrential downpours, rains, and winds. And so you may have a season or a year where your production is not as strong with the trees that's out in the elements. And then the next year, it may be twice what you had anticipated. That's why we talk about an internal rate of return over a period of time. And typically we look at a 30-year period because that's how long our contracts are. And that's just kind of, going beyond that's just ridiculous because we just don't know. We really don't know 30 years from now. But based on historical appreciation, increase in the value of produce, the cost, the demand, all that kind of stuff, that's how the numbers are calculated. And that internal rate of return is going to show you. And so whether you have a bad year and 2 good years and then 3 bad years and 5 good years, still your internal rate of return pretty much comes out consistent over the years. But if you're looking at more of I need this amount of return this year, next year, and every year, then maybe farming is not the type of investment that would be right for that person.
So why trees?
Trees are great because of the produce that you're producing. The demand for the produce, limes, avocados, and mangoes, 3 of the most high demand fruits in the world. The trees are hardy. You can also, there's so much that you can do with trees. And we talk about them producing for 50, 60, 70 years. The thing that's so exciting is when that period of time has come and they're not producing like they once were, you don't have to start from scratch. You just take them down to the very base, you regraft the tree, and you can start all over. And so you're going to be producing again in 2 years. Therefore, you're not tearing up and destroying the soil. Everything stays intact. And you can regraft those trees. So let's say that you had limes and now limes are not the thing anymore, but lemons are. It's still a citrus tree, so you can regraft it with other citrus types of produce and grow those trees now. So the trees can continue to just grow and produce forever if they're managed properly.
What are a couple of questions that an investor needs to know when they're, speaking to an operator like yourself? This is like brand new asset class, but what are a couple key things we need to know that's in place? Or because it would be so far out of my wheelhouse to think about farming in Panama, I wouldn't even know completely what to ask that operator.
Well, I think, honestly, I do a VIP tour in Panama and I say boots on the ground is the best education that you could possibly have. And I do a 3-day intensive educational program for people to really understand and know what's happening and to know what they're investing in. And one of those days we spend on the farm the entire day so that they can see the technology, the pumping stations, learn how. I would love to sit here and go through the whole process of how this is done in the greenhouses and the technology for hydroponics and all that, because it was eye-opening for me. I was raised on a farm, old-fashioned farm with my grandparents, where we were out behind the donkey and the plow, and that's how my grandparents made a living. This is so different. This is high-tech. Drones are used for the technology, drip irrigation, everything's computerized so that if this tree or that vine is getting too much water, not enough water. It's just incredible. And when you come and see that, that's the best way. But we do have many people that purchase sight unseen because of the history and the background of the company and the ownership of the company. It's been around, these companies that we work with, be it the one that we're talking about right now or any of the others, they've been around for a long time and they are profitable and they really produce a good product.
So Since we just have a few minutes left, but since you taught the international investing piece for Rich Dad Poor Dad, and you're very experienced, obviously, just in real estate in general, could you just elaborate on the just benefits or pros and cons of investing internationally like this and in this type of asset class? I was just thinking like trees versus a building, and maybe the tax differences and some things like that.
Well, I'm not a CPA or financial planner, so I can't really
Sure.
give advice, obviously, but in Panama, for example, when you invest in agricultural, because there's such a demand, the government waives all taxes up to $350,000 per year in income. Now, if you're from the United States or if you're from Canada, you still have obligations to your local government, Uncle Sam here in the United States, and you still have an obligation to pay those taxes, but you are not double taxed. In fact, in Panama, there's not even any taxes. And we do buildings and condos and homes and residential and stuff like that in Panama as well, because we work with the whole expat program. But this program is just different in the sense that you do have multiple streams of income, because you have the underlying asset and you have the appreciation of that underlying asset, and you have the cash flow that's coming from throwing off the produce. And I mean, we've got different countries that are begging for the produce, but we can't even grow it fast enough to provide what's needed in Panama right now. We anticipate in 6 or 7 years that we will start exporting, and we're right there on the Panama Canal, which gives us a benefit over most places for the export of that property or that produce. So there's just many, many benefits.
So just a few more questions, unfortunately, before we run out of time. But what's been the hardest part of your real estate investing career? Is there a part that was like, okay, this, I'm moving on because I don't like this part of real estate, or is it just a certain aspect of the business?
Well, honestly, I love real estate. It's just in my blood. And I eat, drink, sleep, and breathe real estate. It's just been my life ever since I graduated from college. But the hardest experience that I ever had was 2008. That was tough. I'm telling you, that was tough. And it wasn't just tough in the United States. It was tough all around the world. And that's been, my hardest experience, but I was not willing to give up, and I hung in there, and I kept, battling through that. But as far as the benefits of real estate, it's cyclical. And you've probably heard this 100 times, but real estate is like any other business. You're going to have your ups and your downs. But what we've seen throughout time is that it continues to gradually go up. It's not a get rich quick scheme. So many people think that's what real estate is. I'm going to get rich overnight if I can get into real estate. Not true. But steady and consistent, will be the stock market all day long.
For sure. What's some way that you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
Well, mine is just constantly working on education, working with other people. I do mentorships and helping other people to understand, work with someone that has done it before you, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk as well. I personally will not even recommend projects to people that I'm not willing to invest in myself. And I think that is probably a key factor, is that so many people just want to jump right in and not have the education, not have the knowledge. And so that's a component. I think I am an educator. I consider myself an educator over an investor, because if you know what you're doing, you're going to have a whole lot better luck than if you go into this blindly. And so many people say, what you don't know won't hurt you. I disagree. What you don't know will definitely hurt you substantially. And you've got to make sure that as you start this journey, you have somebody there to hold your hand and help walk through that process. And that's why I've been a mentor for years. I was a mentor with Rich Dad. I did mentoring of the clients. And then I've also mentored before and since Rich Dad. I have a clientele of clients that I mentor. And I even do free mentoring as a promo. I'll start with a 1-hour free mentoring process of anybody that wants to sit down and look at, is this right for me? It's not a sales pitch. It's let's look at what you want to accomplish, what you want to do, and see if this path might be something that you want to do. Awesome.
Well, I hope that in a minute, you'll tell people how they can get in touch with you and learn more about that. And I hope they'll take you up on that. But you can't know everything, but I like to say I'll never know everything, but I hope I have somebody on my team that does.
That's exactly right. That's what we call the power team. Surround yourself with everybody that knows way more than you do and lean on people that have that strength and that knowledge and experience.
What's your best source for finding new investors?
You know, up until COVID, I was a keynote speaker. I would be in anywhere from 8 to 12 different countries per year and multiple locations throughout the United States, many different states. And that was my exposure. I just go and I teach. And that's where we get prospects and people that are interested in our programs and what we do, both internationally, domestically, and in the agriculture, as well as just the regular real estate. But since the shelter in place has started, we sure have learned how to use Zoom. Virtual conferences and virtual webinars, you name it, we've been doing it all.
So what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Determination. Never quit. Never give up. I mean, it would have been so easy to give up in 2008. If I had time to tell you that story, it was heart-wrenching. And it was so hard. I mean, what I watched so many people go through, just because of the mentality. It was a get-rich-quick mentality in 2006 and 2007 with, Las Vegas and Arizona and Florida at 25 and 40% appreciation in 1 year, and people taking out 120% NEVAs and SEVA loans. I mean, it was just crazy. And then when it came crashing down, I saw everything that you can possibly imagine happen to people and families, and it was gut wrenching. And so that would be the thing that I would say.
Well, I'm glad you stuck with it. You've definitely had success and learned a lot. I'm grateful for your time teaching us today. Tell us how you like to give back other than the just mentoring.
Well, I have always contributed. Of course, I'm a tither, and then St. Jude has been two of my big ones. And there's others that I've always wanted to do, and we're starting a new agricultural brokerage firm right now.
Wow.
And with that one, we are going to be supporting a number of different charities, Wounded Warriors, Breast Cancer Research Foundation, also the, Salvation Army and American Red Cross. And those are the ones that we've chosen just because we feel like those are the charities that we can support and give back. And I don't know if you know about the United Nations Trillion Tree Program. We're working on a Trillion Tree Program with the United Nations. With our tree program, we're qualified for that tree program to help to reforest, the world. And so we have, programs where people can buy one tree just to help with the Trillion Tree Program. And so there's all kinds of things like that we're doing.
Wow. Well, Evie, I'm grateful for your time today and just you being willing to share with us. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about your tree program in Panama and how they can get in touch with you for that 1 hour consultant.
Okay, it's very simple. If you'll just go to Evie Brooks, and that's E-V as in Victor, I-E Brooks, B-R-O-O-K-S, Panama.com. Right there's going to be a 7-8 minute video that will talk about, some of the strategies and the processes for that. And at the end, if you sign up, I will, to watch that video, I'm going to get your email address and I will send you an invitation to schedule a 1 hour mentorship educational session. And from there, we'll determine what's right for each individual person. Very simple. EvieBrooksPanama.com.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.